Director Fletcher.
Here.
Director Fuhrer.
Here.
Director Bradford.
Here.
Director Matthews.
Here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. And Charlie is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Okay. Next item is public comment. I'll let you read whatever we got to do.
Yes, good morning. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board of directors on any subject matter that is not on the meeting agenda and is within the subject matter, the board's subject matter jurisdiction. Public comment periods are limited to 3 minutes per person, and the total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes. Persons participating by way of a video conference or teleconference shall ensure their audio is muted at all times, except when the board chair announces public comment periods. At those designated times, members of the public wishing to speak shall enable their audio and state their name for the record. When multiple members of the public wish to speak, the clerk will determine the order of speakers and announce their names accordingly. To ensure proper conduct, the board reserves the right to mute the audio and video of any member of the public violating generally accepted principles and decorum of official public meetings. Do we have any public comment in the room? We do have at least one online, Mr. Charles Sharp.
Hello,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Charles, go ahead.
Chair, we can hear you.
Good morning, Charles Sharp from the little hamlet of Oregon House. I hope Director Furr is having a good day, and I hope Chairman Vasquez is also having a good day.
It's
I appreciate
Vasquez.
the opportunity to have been part of your recent high performance board retreat. I submitted a letter in the minutes, which you can peruse at your leisure if you wish. The Yuba Water Agency is doing a great job for the people of Yuba County, except perhaps when it comes to a certain foothill water district, regarding which there are some differences of opinion by residents in the foothills with a certain Butte County agency and within the Yuba Water Agency, some stark differences of opinion. I hope the directors of the Yuba Water Agency will work together to help resolve these differences. I wish everybody happy holidays. Thank you for your time.
I think we always work together with you, Charlie. And I forgot an item last meeting. Steve Walls, thank you very much for being there. Okay. Any other public comment? All right,
See none online, sir.
consent.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Can we do a roll call vote?
You want to do a roll call?
It's up to you, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think so.
We will do
We
a
got
roll call
Zoom.
vote. That's fine. Let's start with Director Bradford,
Yes.
Director Fuhrer,
Yes.
Director Matthews,
yes,
Director Blazier,
Yes.
Director Vasquez,
Yes.
Director Hasty,
Yes.
and Director Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 4, consider approval of proclamation recognizing Scott Mediak, Director of Water Resources and Flood Risk Reduction, on his retirement after 14 years of service with the Yuba Water Agency. Apparently we have to take a vote on this.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
According to council. All right, so we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
All right, we'll start with Director Fuhrer,
Yes.
Director Matthews,
yes,
Director Blazier.
Yes.
There he is. Thank you. Director Vasquez,
Yes.
Director Bradford,
Yes.
Director Hasty,
yes.
Director Fletcher.
Yes.
Okay.
And through the chair, I'd like to, I've worked with Scott on probably all of the 14 years, and we hate to see you go, but we appreciate all you've done for us.
All right. I'm gonna make you do this. Scott, would you do that?
Come on up.
We're gonna go to the mic there.
Me too.
I gotta do do that, I'm going to read it. So proclamation recognizing Scott Madiak for 14 years of dedicated service to the Yuba Water Agency. Did I mispronounce your name?
Nope, got it.
Okay, all right. Whereas Scott Madiak joined the water agency in September of 2007 as an assistant manager. Over the course of his tenure, served as a water resources manager, the title of which was changed in October 21 to Director of Water Resources and Flood Risk Reduction. And whereas to meet the requirements of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, Scott led the way for Yuba Water's formation of the Yuba Water Agency Groundwater Sustainability Agency. As the local agency to assess and manage groundwater conditions in the Yuba-Sutter, Yuba subbasins, and to adopt management plans based on those assessments. And where Scott is further recognized for his contributions in Yuba Water Agency long history of cooperating and coordinating with various stakeholders in developing and implementing the Yuba Accord. The Yuba Integrated Regional Water Management Program and a robust surface water and groundwater monitoring program that were all leveraged during the Yuba GSA formation and development of the Groundwater Sustainability Committee. The existing relationship across the county, mutual trust and respect, and in particular, the history of collaborative decision-making with our member units laid the foundation for Yuba Water's GSA formation and the subsequent planning to be not only robust, but lacking in controversy or conflict that was not easily resolved without Scott's leadership. Whereas Scott's leadership was instrumental in the development and implementation of one of the first groundwater sustainability plans approved in the state. Scott's tireless efforts, collaborating with Cordura Irrigation District, the City of Marysville, and key stakeholders led to the formal approval of the plan by the California Department of Water Resources in November 2021, 2 years ahead of our subbasin's deadline. And whereas Scott's humble, calm demeanor is a testament to his natural leadership, and his presence adds credibility, integrity, and genuine kindness upon entering any room. And whereas on behalf of the Yuba Water Agency employees, past and present, the Board of Directors extend a heartfelt gratitude for Scott's tireless service to the people of Yuba County and beyond. We wish you a long, happy, and healthy retirement. And now, therefore, let it be known that this proclamation was duly passed by the Board of Directors of the Yuba Water Agency at a regular meeting held December 21st, 2021, and recognizes Scott Madiak for his extraordinary service to the agency and the people of Yuba County. This is a little, Jim would probably be able to show you this, but this is the dam. I'm trying to figure out which way it's going right there. For you,
Thank you.
here's your box, and the bottom piece lights it up.
Oh, that's
So I'll leave this. I'll
awesome.
leave this in the box here.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
And
I appreciate it. Can I say a few words? I'll keep
Yes,
it few.
Please.
Well, first, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it. But I can't leave today without expressing a few thoughts. And first is just my love and gratitude for my staff who have done the real work. And I'm going to say their names because I want you to know who they are. You know most of them, but if you ever get a chance to know them better, you'll realize that the secret to my success is to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. And they are Joanna Lassard, Caitlin Chow, Carly Hecht, Keith Patterson, Tony Placencia, Charles Jonk, and Ryan McNally. I want to also say that I'm very proud to serve with a very excellent executive management corps that provide sound leadership, but allow their expert staff to do their work. Very much appreciated. I hear that back from my staff, and so I just wanted to pass that along to you, and I want the board to know that too. I appreciate and respect the leaders of our member units. We've spent a lot of time working with them and developing a relationship with them, and we've gotten a lot of work done together. They're a great group of men and women. And last but definitely not least, I want to tell you how thankful I am for this board, who through the years has provided unwavering support for staff, no matter what the situation, no matter what the differences of opinion among the various board members. You've always made us feel supported so that we can get the work done that you want us to do. And that is noticed and appreciated by staff, and I want all of you to know about that. Well, thank you again for the recognition, and may God bless all of you. I appreciate it very much. Likewise.
Through the chair, I just want to say, Scott, it has been a joy to work with you. I've never been in your office when you weren't smiling, even though I know there were days you were having bad days. You were always positive. And I also want to say that I think it's a testament to your incredible work that the GSAs are completed in Yuba County, first in the state, or one of the first in the state. And bringing those people together to get this done was just incredible. And I know that your entire team got this done, but it was your leadership that did that. And I just want to say thank you. And we will forever be grateful for having that completed. So have a wonderful retirement. Enjoy every second you get with family.
Will do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Through the chair. So Scott, I realize this was a difficult task today. And this is one of those things you have to do in life that allows us to at least recognize who you are and what you've done. And there's not much I can add to that proclamation. It's all there. Other than thanks for your help. You know, coming on this board, I didn't know much about water other than it came out of a tap. So you just turn that handle and that's all there is. So again, thank you for your time that you've spent with me, and I suspect other board members over the years, and that makes a difference. Where you come from, it really helps in the department that you all work together, and you've done a great job. As far as retirement, never retire. See, the way I look at it is you retire, then you die. Don't do that. We'd like to put you to work somewhere doing maybe a little job here and there. We have to think about that as you move forward. Spend a few months at home doing nothing, and then when you get bored, give us a call. Maybe there's something you'd like to do. So again, congratulations on retirement, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the future.
Great, thank you.
Through the chair, real quick, Scott, I can't really add much to what's already been said, but I can add just a personal thank you for your service to the agency and to the people of Yuba County, and congratulations on your retirement, and enjoy it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Any public comment at all? Item 5, review the audited financial statement for the year ending July 30th, 2020. Well,
Good morning.
Curtis,
Curtis
you know.
Crawford, Finance Manager. Brian Nash should be on Zoom, and he will be sharing his screen.
Correct. Yeah, Brian, you have the ability when you're ready.
While he gets that teed up, I'll introduce him. So Brian Nash is with Richardson and Company. He's been our auditor for the last 5 years. So this will be his last year. We'll need to switch partners within Richardson and Company next year. But Brian really rode the wild ride with us over the last 5 years. So his first year was included May 1st, 2016, which was the expiration of the PG&E PPA, or Power Purchase Agreement. So we've seen a lot of change. I think we've made a lot of progress. Hopefully he confirms that and not denies that in his presentation. So with that, Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, and yes, I would like to confirm that. Boy, it's been quite a lot of changes in this last few years. And with regard to the audit, when we first started, it was pretty difficult to get the audit completed because things were very manual. It was kind of a small entity-oriented structure for their finance department, and Curtis has automated a lot of that, made it much easier. The amount of work and adjustments that we've posted during the audit has declined significantly to where we are today. So you should have three things from us. You should have the audited financial statements, a management letter, and a governance letter. The governance letter is a letter of required disclosures to a governing body that's required by audit standards. And so that I'm going to go over in my presentation everything that's in that letter, so I won't refer to it specifically. You should be able to see the audited financial statements on my screen. The independent auditor's report is on page 1 of the financial statements. It is what is called a clean opinion. There's no modifications, so everything came out fine. There's also in the back of the report, there's compliance reports. Those show no findings as well. In the back of the financial statements, we have combining statements for the individual units, the general fund and the power fund. We don't provide opinions on those individually, just combined. We had no disagreements with management, no conditions on our retention or anything unusual of that nature. I'd like to show you, so on the screen you'll see what's called the management's discussion and analysis. There's some condensed financial information if you just have a short amount of time to look at the financial statements to get a good feeling of what's happening. You can look in the MD&A. It's an executive summary. I'll be covering some of the main points that you'll see in the MD&A. On the statement of net position, cover a couple of kind of the major changes that we dealt with during the audit. You'll see that the cash increased significantly, up 19 million, and then the receivables are up 3 million. Those are due to the strong power sales that added to the cash, and the receivables were a lot larger because of that. You'll see there's a large decline in the loans receivable. So what happened there is the Three Rivers Levy Authority loan receivable for covering those payments that the agency had been doing for a number of years was written off due to the workout plan that was approved by the board. So there was over a $17 million receivable that was written off through expense. So that's the main change there. In the liability section, you'll see unearned revenue. There was some water transfer revenue that was provided by the Department of Water Resources several years ago. All of that water had now been delivered during the fiscal year that we're auditing. So all of that unearned revenue is recognized during the year. You'll see that in the income statement. So you see, because of the strong income, the unrestricted net position went from 171 million to 182 million. So boy, a lot of agencies would love to be in the position you're in right now. You'll see on the income statement side, there's the sale of electric energy, that strong increase there. And you'll see the water sales include that unearned revenue. That's why it went from just a small amount, 530,000 to 12 million. So you see the operating expenses were down 2.7 million. There were some large maintenance projects in the prior year. Narrows 2, penstock coating was one of them. So that's why that dropped. You see the hydropower generation expenses also decline. Let's see. So the non-operating expenses, this is where you'll see that $17 million write-off of that note receivable related to Three Rivers Levy Authority. So in total, the change in net position, the net income was $24.8 million, very strong. Going on to the footnotes. So all of the accounting policies are described in Note A that we use to prepare the financial statements. I always pause at this footnote. This is the board designations, the reserves that have been approved. Everything has been funded except for the non-routine and capital projects reserve. The target's 146 million and 128 million. 128.9 million was funded. So getting close to that total target there at the end of last year. Let's see. So you'll see on the notes receivable footnote here, you'll see that $17 million write-off of that note receivable. So of the remaining notes receivable, 17.8 million of the 22 million are from the county or from the Three Rivers Levy Authority. And you can see the other ones that are in the schedule there. Let's see, going on to note 5 at page 24. So this is the capital asset footnote. You'll see that the FERC relicensing costs are in construction and progress. So we have both the regular costs to get the license renewed, as well as the second spillway costs. That's a big part of the capital assets. The license cost will be capitalized and amortized over the license period once the license has been issued. So going on to just wanted to stop here. The district or the authority, the agency has a net pension, net OPEB asset, a net post-retirement healthcare benefit asset, which is almost unheard of. You're the only client I have that has a net OPEB asset. So it's been overfunded partially because PG&E helped make a contribution to it before the contract expired. The net pension liability did increase a little bit from 2.5 million to 3.2 million. The investment earnings in the past were down. It's computed as of June 30, 20 instead of 21. It's a year behind. 2021 had really strong investment earnings, so you should probably see the positive benefit of that. I think there's over 21% CalPERS investment earnings in 2021. It's just not reflected because of the date the liability was computed. But the liability for pension and the fact that the OPEB is fully funded is just almost unheard of in an agency of your size to have such a small effect of those two items. I'm sure the county, where a lot of the board members are from, would love to be in that position. So let's see. There's pension and OPEB footnotes that show all of the methods and assumptions used to compute those liabilities. I'm not going to go into those in detail, but there's a lot of information there to look at if you're interested in how those were computed. I'm going to go on to one of the significant footnotes here is about the Three Rivers Levy Authority debt, note 16. So it's called conduit debt. So this is where we just describe the involvement that the agency has with that debt. This footnote has been reworked due to the workout that was approved. It used to discuss how there was the agency was covering some of the bond payments if the levy fees were not high enough, and there was a receivable that was related to that was dependent on the impact fees. Well, now it talks about the new situation where those have been written off, and there's still some involvement that the agency has. It talks about how in the situation where an agency has voluntarily offered to cover the debt payments, that generally you would report a liability on the balance sheet, but the fact that the county has the full liability recorded is the reason that the agency doesn't report a liability for that debt. So that's all discussed in this footnote. This footnote here shows all of the grants that were provided during the year under your policy. So it went from 6.7 up to 10.5 million. Quite extensive list. It's getting bigger every year. There's some discussion here of the flood damage expenses that were incurred and the grants that have been received. There was new grants that have been approved, but they were approved after year end of approximately 1.4 million. Those were not accrued as revenue during the year because they were approved after year end, but that's going to be covered by Cal OES and FEMA in 22. So the changes in estimates footnote describes the write-off of that receivable. And there is also a grant receivable that was accrued that turns out the amount probably shouldn't have been accrued. So there was the local share, let's see, the Department of Water Resources determined that the local share wouldn't come to the agency. There's a San Diego State was involved, and they're going to pay the rest of the grant to San Diego State, or is that UC Santa Barbara? I'm sorry. One of the colleges here in Southern California is doing the work, and the rest of the grant's going to be going to that college rather than to the agency. So the agency wrote off a receivable that it accrued that it assumed would come through the agency and be passed through to that college. So the subsequent events talks about all of the things that have happened since June 30. So there's the 5-year agreement with the county for funding of all the same things that the agency's been funding in the past, just a longer term agreement, so it doesn't have to approve those each year. There's some more grants that have been approved. Much of this footnote is about all the grants that have been approved. There's a discussion about covering the county's unfunded pension payment that the county will pay back over time. And so a heck of a lot of grants that were disclosed or that are disclosed here that were approved after year end. Also, the water transfer agreement with Contra Costa Water District is disclosed here at the bottom. There is combining statements. Oh, so one thing I wanted to pause and talk about the pension plan funded percentage. You can see it's 88%. That's higher than most other agencies. This is the pension plan with CalPERS because of the agency put some money into the plan in the past. And then the post-retirement healthcare benefits is over 100% funded. Boy, all my other clients would definitely like to be in the position that the agency is in with those liabilities. They're quite significant on some other clients. So there's a combining statement in the back here that shows the general fund and power systems fund separately that you can review to see those departments, the activity in those departments separately. Okay, so that's all I had on the financial statement. I'll mention the management letter here. We don't have anything new. Originally, there were 20 recommendations. Most of those have been implemented. We just have a few related to capital assets. That might be something that still needs to be automated that I think would probably benefit everybody if it was. I think it would be a lot easier to reconcile when doing the audit. There's some amounts below the capitalization threshold on the list that probably could be written off that are fully depreciated. That I think would help simplify it, make it smaller, recommending that approving a capital asset policy, documenting depreciable lives that should be used for depreciating assets, and the criteria for capitalization versus maintenance, and just a few other recommendations. The number of audit adjustments has declined significantly, but we would like to see it kind of get under maybe 10 adjustments with an agency the size of the agency. That's probably the goal that everybody has. If you can get it under 10, it's doing really well. We had 22 adjustments and closing entries we posted during the audit, so we're getting closer every year. There's a recommendation related to how the payroll is recorded. We usually have there's a due to and from between those two units that has to be eliminated for reporting purposes. And usually because of the payroll, the way the payroll is reported, we have a imbalance there that needs to be figured out every year. So we talked about that with Curtis, and he's well aware of that one. And currently the way the system's set up, the two individual units in the back, the general fund and the power system, they're not in separate funds. And I believe the system does have the ability to do that. I think that would be beneficial to set them up in separate funds. That would be quite an undertaking to do because all the charter accounts has been established, but it would help make sure that the two units separately balance with all the entries that are posted. But these are not considered to be major issues, just kind of recommendations to help improve things a little bit more. The other required disclosure is what's estimated in the financial statements. The fair value of the investments in the county pool, that's an estimate. And the pension and post-retirement healthcare benefit liabilities, those are estimated based on actuarial valuations. So with that, that's all I have. I'd be happy to cover anything in more detail that you are interested in.
Through the chair. Brian, I have a quick question. It is absolutely a technical accounting question. It has little to do with the numbers.
Okay.
Why does the agency, I mean, I know why I use depreciation in my corporation to lower and change my cash flows, but what is the use for depreciation in a nonprofit organization? Because it's never going to change your cash flow.
Well, it's required by accounting standards. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires depreciation to be reported. So instead of expensing those fixed assets when they're purchased, they believe that misstates the current year results. So even though it's not a for-profit entity, it's still expensing fixed assets when they're purchased would misstate the results for that year because they're long-term assets. So, similar to a for-profit, it's something that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board thinks is important. And I think if somebody's looking at your numbers from outside, if they're, a lot of government agencies have debt, it gives a better picture of the capacity to pay debt if those are not expensed.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Could I get you to comment? I believe under the Sarbanes-Oxley, I think you touched on it a couple of years ago. We're supposed to change auditors every 3 years, but we can also just change auditors within the company. I'm not suggesting we've invested a lot of your time and ours to do a good job and understand the agency, but could you briefly enlighten us on what the rule is?
Sure. There's actually under the California Government Code, that is what applies to the agency. So the California Government Code has a rule that they implemented back in 2013 or 14 that says agencies do not have to rotate audit firms, but they do have to rotate audit partners after 6 consecutive audits. And that's the approach that the SEC and all the other regulatory bodies, Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, have taken for large SEC registrants. They don't have to rotate audit firms, but they do have to rotate audit partners after a certain number of years. And so that's where the California Government Code got that approach. So after 6 consecutive audits, the partner has to be rotated.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Brian, can you send me some link that discusses the due to, due from entry process that would hopefully make some kind of sense to a layperson that isn't a CPA?
The due to, due from entry.
Yes.
So I think, let me pull something up real quick here. So is this what you're referring to? There's a due to and from between the 2 different units for financial reporting. What we do is we eliminate that because it's not an external liability. It's the liability between the 2 units. So for financial reporting purposes, that is eliminated. So the column that we report in the front of the financial statement. So this is a combining statement. This is the column that we report in the front of the financial statements that our opinion applies to. That intra-entity activity has been eliminated, so it doesn't overstate the assets and the liability. This column shows the assets and liability related to external parties. Does that help?
So you've recommended that we eliminate that?
So in our management letter, what we're talking about is usually when we start the audit, this number doesn't balance with this number. There's pretty complicated entries related to the payroll. The payroll's paid by the Power Systems Fund, and then the general fund needs to reimburse it. And so sometimes it's in the accounts payable system. So the payable is in the accounts payable side, but there's a receivable and the due from other funds. So these need to balance so we can eliminate them so we don't show that as external activity. So the recommendation is to get those entries working so the intra-fund receivables agree to the intra-fund payables when the audit begins. And Curtis is well aware, it's really, the way it's been recorded is kind of complicated. And I think maybe one of the things that may help is if the general fund immediately reimburses the power system fund on the day the payroll is run, then there wouldn't be a receivable and a payable between the 2 funds. But I don't know if Curtis wants to chime in there, but it's related to getting those 2 numbers to balance so they can be eliminated for financial reporting purposes.
No, I think I've heard all I need to hear at this point.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay.
We do have one member online with their hand raised, Charles Sharp.
Okay.
Hello, Charles Sharp. Thank you. You guys have $160 million in the bank. It's pretty good. My comment is about.
Glad you approve.
Yes, I do. My comment is about the grant to the North Yuba Water District included in this report. $700,000 to $800,000 so far, as I've counted up. In October, the agency voted 4-3 to grant the North Yuba Water District $104,000. The Water District spends about $100,000 a month on legal fees. Next year, South Feather has budgeted about $2,709,000 to the North Yuba Water District. Just some facts to consider. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. No further comments? All right.
Through the chair, does this need
Yes.
a motion to approve? Nope, great. Okay.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Item 6, review financial statement detail for general and power system funds. Curtis, you're on again.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brian.
Thank you. I'll excuse myself now. Bye-bye.
Okay, yes. So it's final budget time here in December for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. We just heard what our financial position was 6/30 of 2021. I'll kick this off with where we were October 31st, 2021. So we'll work our way into where we are today, and then give us a glimpse of where we anticipate we'll be at the end of 6/30/2022, seeking your approval of this final budget. Typically during the December final budget, I bring to you November financials, but they're just not quite ready. So I have a note in there that we will have the ABP meeting in January to go over the November financials. With the new settlement times from CAISO, the revenue and power systems just was not available yet in time to get this packet out. So this will be October financials, so the ABP members have seen this already. But that'll be the order of this. It's a much smaller budget adjustment here in December than previous Decembers, because as you guys may recall, we had a pretty significant budget adjustment back in, I believe, August, when we made the decision to postpone the tunnel outage. That gave us an opportunity to take a look at all of our large non-routine maintenance projects and capital projects and push some forward and pull some others back. So there's less moving parts in this December final budget adjustment than you're used to seeing. So this will go relatively quickly, but let's dive in, starting with October 2021 financial results. Starting with power systems revenue. October revenue down from September, so 6.1 million down to 5.1 million, but we are still benefiting from elevated rates for resource adequacy through the entire calendar year. In 2022 should be more of the same. So we should have a high revenue floor on power systems because that capacity product is still valued quite high. It is up significantly since we took over in 2016. We also benefited, although slightly, from Narrows 1, now that we own it. So typically during the Narrows 2 outage, and all the water is running through Narrows 1, there was a revenue sharing agreement with PG&E. Now that PG&E doesn't own Narrows 1, all of the revenue earned by Narrows 1 during the Narrows 2 outage is ours. So that is another little boost to the floor of our power systems revenue. So all told at 5.1 million in October. On the general fund side, nothing to report since the activity in July, that big spike there in July, the 28.2 million, that's 50% of the DWR water transfers. We will settle out the second 50% and true up what was actually delivered here in January. So that's around the corner. So you'll see that in either February or March when we go over those financials. Agency expenses. So for the month of October, they're up significantly due to a couple of large projects. As I try to mention each time we do a budget presentation, those large non-routine and capital projects is really what moves the needle on our budget. Routine and those kind of corrective expenses are relatively flat. So when we see a spike like this, oftentimes it's attributed to a couple of one-off large projects, and in this case, that is true. In power systems, we had the Our House sediment removal project at 3.8 million. So although we were cut short due to rainfall, they were able to move roughly 40,000 cubic yards of dirt from behind our house to clear the impoundment. The valves are now clear. So some great progress was completed before that project was rained out. On the general fund side, 4.9 million related to land acquisitions that were approved by this board. Roughly September timeframe, we dispersed that in October. We expect us to return to trend through at least January. We're going to go into Colgate outages, or we're in Colgate outages. So November was definitely a return to trend. I'll foreshadow a little bit since the expenses were pretty much ready to go. In December, though, we will see another spike, not as large, but it's related to the rest of the land acquisitions that were approved. These ones are in the power systems side. This will give us the access to the Penstock portal. If we need to do something with the spoils pile, we'll have that access to do so. I actually just wired the payment this morning. It was 1.8 million will be on top of our normal routine expenses in December. So a little foreshadowing of spikes that you can anticipate to see in this graph in subsequent months. This chart here, this is our stacked chart that's showing the portion of our expenses that are just agency related they're in that kind of lime green color, and then those kind of snow cap, that's the grant expenses. So all told is our total expenses. But the blue ones is the expenses stemming from the $10 million target in our community impact grant program. In September, we saw an increase in the percentage of our expenses related to that program, mainly due to the first disbursement of the new county agreement. Brian mentioned that in one of the notes in the financials. We now have the $3.5 million annual agreement with the county dispersed quarterly. That is overwhelmingly flood risk reduction. So that comes through the community impact program here. Although not within the 10 million, that was one of the reasons for doing a standalone agreement, it's still investment into flood risk reduction. And so we capture it here. So the October expenses, again, driven up by our house and the land acquisitions. But a slight reduction in the percentage of expenses related to grants because it's absent that $875,000 disbursement to the county. Another way to slice and dice expenses, this is just a line chart here that breaks out now flood risk reduction and community water projects. So let's see if my cursor works here. Hopefully it works on your screen as well. Flood risk reduction went up. There's your $875,000 payment to the county, causing that spike. So grants all told in the green here went up, driven by flood risk reduction. Down in October, again, led by flood risk reduction, but we are starting to see an increase in community water projects. Community water projects is basically everything not flood risk reduction. So watershed resilience, water education, water supply and management. That last one, water supply and management, is one where we anticipate to see some increase in expenses out of the community impact grant program related to the local shares of the DWR Prop 1 implementation grant that we received, and all the agreements are signed and executed, and those projects are well underway. If you remember, there were 6 projects that came out of the IRWIMP that were approved. So now work is underway. So we do expect to see those billings come through as we disperse our local share to capture those DWR Prop 1 grant funds. Monthly results. So this is the slide that plots 2 data points per month. Revenue and blue, expenses are in red. In October, we had our net loss because our expenses were at 14.2 million if we round up, against our revenue of 5.5 million. Silver lining with the net loss there is a large portion of that was land acquisitions. Not typically income statement activity, that's going to result in an asset, but since we're asking for appropriation so we can disperse the funds, it ends up in our budget here. So it looks like a net loss, but part of that net loss is just transferring into the balance sheet from cash to now we have an asset in the form of land. So it mitigates the net loss there. Yeah, so let's see, so far, yeah, so August, we also posted a small net loss just due to the reduction in revenue. In July, of course, was a great month in terms of net income because we saw strong power sales as we typically do in a summer month, coupled with a large water transfer. So in January, we'll see another spike that looks similar to July. Although power sales will be a little bit less than what we saw in July. We will see the second half of that DWR water transfer come through in July. So again, more foreshadowing of what this chart's likely to do in the coming months. So what does this mean for reserves? So establish a bit of a pattern where in July and August, we see net incomes that we see a pretty sizable amount that we could contribute to reserves after the course of those 2 months, given revenue is high, expenses are relatively low. We tend to give a little bit back through the fall and maybe even the beginning of winter as we go into our annual outage season. Demand in the power market's a little bit less, so that's the time to take your unit offline and do your preventative maintenance so that it's running in tip-top shape June through August when power prices are high. So looking at the actual numbers in the budget, we are forecasting 43.2 million at the end of October at 25.7 million. So we're under the final budget, but this will spike in January when the second half of that DWR water transfer comes in. That's going to be a significant net income. That's going to cause this chart to really reverse. And I suspect that $43 million number will be in our sights. So that was October financials. I'll kind of switch gears and start talking about budget unless there's any questions on financials so far. Seeing none, I'll switch gears into budget here. As I mentioned, it's a smaller change than we're typically seeing in December. There's a lot less moving parts. I'll use the long range forecast to talk high level, and then we'll go ahead. Yeah, I think so. So the process we follow in June, as you guys recall, we saw the proposed budget that was kicking off the fiscal year. So July 1, we're authorized to start spending. In December, and typically this last meeting in December, we bring back a final budget adjustment. The county might do it in September, I believe. So this is our version of it. We're not held to that September standard, which is fine. I have less guesswork to do because I've got a couple less months to forecast for. So here we are in December. This will take us through June 30th, 2022. You'll also note that we have a 2-year budget. So that second year is also adjusted somewhat. The goal of that second year budget is really to allow us to get working on some of our larger projects. And the end of the current fiscal year with those dollars allocated in the second year budget, it allows us to do things like go out to bid and start getting these contracts in place because our fiscal year does end June 30th. That's right in the heart of construction season. So what we were seeing is we were trying to accelerate bids at the beginning of a fiscal year, and that was driving up price. We were getting less respondents. So we made a shift to a 2-year budget. Thanks, Willie. So what we have up on the screen here is the long range forecast. It's been adjusted here with the December final budget adjustment. I'll give a lay of the land here. A couple of years of actual, so 1920, 2021 are included. Our updated final budget through 2022 here in this column. We have revenue here at the top, summed agency-wide. Expenses are here in the middle. I just kind of color-coded power systems in blue, general fund in green. So we have agency combined expenses here at the bottom. Net effect on reserves is a different way of saying net income. Reserve rolling total, so that 182,649,824, that number will look familiar from the financials. That's our reserve balance heading into this current fiscal year. To demonstrate cash available to us, we back out loans receivable. Loans receivable is less than it was in prior years due to the write-off. And then we also backed out the reserve no-touch designation. So the first few buckets there are no-touch. That's operating, emergency, the bond payment. The hold this is reserves that we aren't looking to spend. Those are, in fact, the rainy day fund. And all told, there is our available cash after this long range forecast. Both funds are broken out routine operating expenses and non-routine and large. The difference between the two, this non-routine and large, comes from our 5-year plan. These are our larger individually scoped projects. This is really what moves the needle in the budget year to year. You look at operating expenses, and in power systems, it's almost completely flat. In general fund, it's relatively flat as well. We actively keep an eye on that. If we see corrective maintenance at the plant start to spike and our routine expenses are starting to spike, that would be a red flag for us. But the non-routine and large projects are the ones that we're individually justifying and scoping, and it really makes a difference year to year in the budget. What I have here are a couple of individual ones that have been either previously discussed by the board or approved by the board. So it's within this non-routine large line item. It includes things like the Halvey Way development, which needs to get renamed to Power System Headquarters because we switched locations. It's not on Halvey Way any longer. Tunnel outage, which we talked about last time you saw the long range forecast. We were shifting tunnel outage out to 23-24. Land acquisition, we were just talking about that disbursement, that 1.9. That's what I wired this morning. Same thing in general fund, secondary spillway, ARC spillway. I'll find and replace secondary spillway with ARC spillway where I can find it. So I don't hear from Dee. Fish screen, the bond payment here, habitat restoration, and then license conditions. So for ARC spillway and license conditions, that will get moved to power systems once the relicensing process is complete. But right now it lives in general fund, so we can capture it in our bucket of relicensing expenses because what we want is that 50-year license, longest term that we can get. So we want to keep all of our efforts made in relicensing in one easy to locate place. Some changes here before I switch this slide. Proposed budget on the expenses here. So we're in 21-22. We're at 112.6. The proposed budget was 109.5. So we're up about 3.1 million. About $500,000 of that comes from power systems. Some give and take. Sediment removal gave back a little bit of funding, but we also pulled forward a project. The Narrows to transformer is being pulled up into the current fiscal year. The reason we did that is the cost of materials is escalating each day. So we pulled the trigger to get the thing fabricated, and we'll store it until we're ready to install it. I was gonna say plug it in, but we're doing a little bit more than just plug it in. So we accelerated that. So we expect delivery at the end of June. So some more foreshadowing. If it doesn't hit the end of June, you will see we'll come in significantly under budget, about 900,000 or so. In the current year budget, we'll have to push those expenses in July. Again, that fiscal year cutoff is going to dictate what happens to the budget, but that's the bulk of the increase in power systems. General fund, the land acquisitions is the bulk of the increase, 2.6 million in general fund, as well as a couple of opportunities to invest into flood risk reduction with the county. We have a real-time inundation mapping project that we're working on jointly with the county. Then we also have the opportunity to work with DWR to do some enhanced snow surveys. We were a bit let down by the quality of the snow surveys heading into this year. This snow survey will be, I think it's a helicopter flyover. It should provide us a little bit better data so we can forecast a little more effectively. That was another opportunity that came before us, and we jumped on that, and that's in the $2.6 million increase in general fund.
Ask question?
Absolutely.
Back one slide. So the projected revenue on general fund is pretty 17 million for the next couple years, and for this year the actual was 18 million. Why do we have a projected revenue of 71 million?
So 71 million for general fund revenue in the current year is the known water transfer that we're able to conduct. So that 28 million that we saw in the October financials in July, plus the other 28 or roughly 28 to 29 in January gets us to 56. Then we have some significant incoming grant funding, which is also in general fund revenue. It offsets a lot of our expenses. 4.5 million from CAL FIRE to support the watershed resilience program. A couple others from DWR. The GSP is still a grant from DWR. So all of that is known already. 17 million is flat because it's attempting to average. We know that in each of these fiscal years, we're not going to have the opportunity to conduct a water transfer. We either won't have the water or there'll be so much water, there's no market for it. So I kind of smoothed it out. It's not going to be 17 million each year, but it's a target. So over the next 5 years, hopefully we're in the ballpark. This also omits any grant funding that we haven't captured yet. We're obviously identifying and chasing as many grant funding opportunities as possible to offset some of our expenses, but not counting those chickens before they hatch.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question. The Daguerre, did I pronounce that right? Daguerre? Daguerre.
Tomato.
Yeah. That's a small item, but it's somewhere in upcoming expenses, right?
So the fish screen at that dam
It's part of the fish screens.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we don't own the actual dam, but the here in general fund, the fish screen replacement is forecasted here in the long range forecast. So I think we're getting close to 90% design. So construction is on the horizon.
Okay, thanks.
Did you also, more than my comment, we're trying to get funding on the secondary spillway. We keep looking at, we're funding it. And, I think it's very hard to get money from Congress. They think you already have. How can we put it in a little bit different light?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. Let me know if you want to chime in, but it's an interesting balance where we need to show that we can fully fund the project when we're submitting applications for grant funding. There's a healthy amount of competition for grant funding, so they want to fund projects that are actually going to come to fruition. We're going through that now with Cal OES and FEMA, where they're going to want to see that if they grant us X amount, we can cover the rest of it. So they don't award our project, not award another project, and then ours never gets off the ground, and we don't capture that funding from FEMA. So the way we're looking at it in the long range forecast is any grant funding that comes in is just offsetting expense. So our cash position, our reserve position will get better than this, but this is kind of setting the low end of the spectrum.
Through the chair, I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, as a banker, I always want to give money to people who already have the money in the bank. And so I think that's kind of what this grant program looks like. They'll love to give us money if we already have it.
Yeah, so Director Matthews, that's a great question. And like Curtis mentioned, it's a balance. There's some grant opportunities where they want to see that you have the capacity to see the project through. And there's others that may be skeptical if you have the money or it looks like it's already funded. The fact of the matter is we include it as an estimate in here so we know how to budget for it if in fact we choose to fund it ourselves. But we are strategically seeking outside funds and looking at that balance, the risk of having it on the balance sheet and not.
Okay, any further questions?
All right. Diving a little bit deeper, although I think I stole my own thunder on that last slide. But here, this is agency revenue, power system trends, and general fund trends. No requested changes in revenue. We don't know any more or less on the power system side or the general fund side. What we knew in roughly September is what we know today. So no changes on the revenue side. Expenses here is power systems. I talked about the Narrows 2 transformer. We're pulling that forward. We're able to give a little bit of money back on a couple of projects. The Narrows 2 intake gate debris removal project ended up being smaller in scope once we were able to get in there and actually gain access to that intake gate. So that allowed us to offset some of the costs of pulling that transformer delivery into the current fiscal year. So those trends are there. One thing I will mention that was brought up in the financials, we saw a decrease in operating expenses in fiscal year 2021 because a lot of that effort and those dollars shifted towards capital projects. So we saw a pretty significant increase in investment in capital assets, and it kind of came at the expense of operating expenses, which is a good thing. We invested in ourselves. So that's just one note here. So you'll actually kind of see in maintenance at 11.8 million in fiscal year 2021. That's the outlier. So we saw an 85% increase to 21 million. While part of that is 8 million coming from our house sediment removal, which we don't do every year. We try to not do it but once every 10 years. The 11.8 million is really the low one. So when you're comparing the trend, I've only got 3 years on there, but if we went to 5 years, you would see that that's really the outlier. So I did want to describe that one in case that jumps out at anybody.
Through the chair. Curtis, on the Our House removal, I mean, we got rained out, so we didn't finish it. So can we assume that it won't be 10 years now, it might be 7 or 8 and we'll budget for that? Or do we hope that it gets to 10 years?
Yeah, it's unknown. We'll continue to do the diving and the survey to make sure that the valves are in good shape, but likely not next year, but probably not 10 years either.
Okay, thanks.
General fund now, again, I did steal my own thunder. So some of the increases here, flood risk reduction, we have the real-time inundation mapping project that we're doing jointly with the county, the snow surveys, and then there is the work on a kind of a regional plan in the area of flood risk reduction of what's next, what's the next best investments in the areas of flood risk reduction. Again, some of these percent changes are going to draw attention, like 30,000% increase. Capital projects are less common in general fund. It's really just the facilities and vehicles. So we had the land acquisitions, and that's in the 7.2 million. That's what caused the spike. We don't typically see capital projects in general fund. So that's what that is. The significant decreases in flood risk reduction, the $17 million Plumas Lake fee workout plan is included in the 26.6. So that drove up 2021 numbers. So that's causing the decrease when you're looking at this trend for the current year final budget. That is it for the financial part of it. I think the last item I have is the personnel allocation. Feel free if there's any questions while I pull that up.
Any questions? Any questions, public?
We do have one online, sir.
Yeah.
Want to take it now, Mr. Sharp?
Yes, thank you. It looks like the DWR sale is going to get you back to the $43 million reserve level target. Good move. Thank you.
Great news.
All right, actually, real quickly before, and maybe I should have done this before the slide deck. Just a lay of the land on the income statement if you're looking at it, and where we're seeing all of these numbers come from. So here we are. This is October 31st income statement. So the slide deck that we looked at was looking at these numbers. Actuals for October, actuals year to date. The proposed budget is the one as of September, because we had that update since June. Final budget is what we're seeking approval on, this column here. Projected budget is the title that we gave our second year budget versus proposed. It's projected for the second year. So that's kind of the lay of the land. You can see how September numbers change here into December. Organized the same way as a long range forecast, revenue at the top, expenses on down to net income. So now personnel adjustments included in the December final budget adjustment. We have a couple of requested additions. First, the staff account. This will be a second staff account. It's a job description that we already have on file. We had a great deal of success bringing on a staff accountant and kind of working them into our system. What we're seeking now is a little more bandwidth. We are handling a lot more incoming grant. That's what you guys hear. I'm so sorry. A lot more incoming grant activity, not just our own grants that we're attaining, but also acting as the fiscal agent for outside grants. For example, U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is a federal grant on behalf of Browns Valley Irrigation District. So just extra manpower to absorb things like that. We're also seeking, I'll keep it in my department before jumping to environmental, where is it? A procurement supervisor. So this is to add additional resources and expertise to our procurement function, which is really relatively new. Since 2016, we have kind of pieced it together. We had Andrea Armstrong, as many of you guys know, kind of shouldering the load. This is, again, to increase the bandwidth in that department so we can evaluate our own contracts and agreements, including grant agreements in our community impact grant program, and the grant agreements that we're signing for the incoming grants as well. So there's a lot more work coming through the pipeline in procurement. And this individual will help the day-to-day operations in procurement to give Andrea, who's currently our general services administrator, time on the more policy and structure for that relatively new function. We have two procurement specialists that are on board. This individual will be there at their fingertips for support as they're still growing. So that's the role of the procurement supervisor. The last addition that we have or we're requesting is an environmental specialist. This is resurrecting a job description that we had, minor tweaks, but we had some success bringing in an environmental specialist. Again, just like the procurement world, environmental world is also increasing the more we are advancing projects in all of our various mission areas. This will be extra bandwidth in the compliance department to help shoulder that load. So that's the proposed additions. We have a deletion here. The executive advisor, the incumbent has since retired, and we're not looking to refill that. So we're going to go ahead and ask that be deleted from the personnel allocation. And then this is new for the ABP folks, so that you guys did not see this. Looking for a request to reallocate the associate hydro engineer into a hydro engineer kind of staff level position. This individual that's currently the incumbent of the associate engineer has since obtained her PE. She actually started as an intern, worked her way up, managed the Our House sediment removal project. So we've added to the budget memo and included a little justification in the packet. This is different than ABP. This was not part of what was recommended, but I did want to call that out as a request for reallocating from associate to a staff level hydro engineer. And with that, that concludes the request.
Any further questions for the board?
Through the chair, a couple of them. One, this might be a Willie question, and then a question on this allocation. Do we need to make a motion on this now that you've changed the allocation so that it's approved by the board? Or because normally, okay, that's the first question. Second one was, Willie, can you give me an understanding of, I know it, but we talk about we're not going to have water transfers, but we're seeing a pretty significant water increase coming into the system. What do you think the chances are, and what's the process when we'll know whether or not this year is a water transfer year?
Well, you know, if you would ask me a month ago, I would have said absolutely. But we had significant storms last couple of weeks and more storms, so we don't necessarily know. It looks like, you know, in the last storm, maybe just isolated areas in the state got significant precipitation, but this is a widespread precipitation event, so the whole state should benefit. So that improves the conditions throughout the state. However, and I hate talking about it, but we oftentimes see a significant high pressure system build in the January, February time period. So you don't know what's going to happen there. If we get the snowfall, we think we're going to get over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a very good water year. Generally, we know around April 1st, B120, what the water year is going to look like. Steve kind of has an idea what's happening in March, and he has a little forecasting there, but officially we know around April 1st.
Okay, thanks. All right, with that, I'll move approval of this item.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Comment on water. We have a good water year going. It looks like it will be that way. The reservoirs, other than ours, are extremely low. So even a good water year won't bring the reservoirs up to normal. So transfers are still, I think, very viable.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Roll call.
Thank you. Let's start with Director Hasty.
Aye.
Director Fletcher. Absent.
Director
Had to leave it.
Fletcher left.
Yep.
Take his wife.
Thank you. Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Fuhrer.
Yes.
Director Blazer.
Yes.
Director Vasquez.
Yes.
And Director Bradford.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Great job, Curtis.
Managers report.
Okay,
Love
let's
the
see.
written report. That was great to read.
Yeah, so you read it already, so we're good?
It's great.
All right, we'll have some comments anyway. Okay, let's start from 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, I was out at a conference. I want to thank Terry for sitting in for me and delivering the manager's report. I did listen in. I was at the airport, so I didn't chime in because it was loud around me, but thank you, Terry, for sitting in and delivering the report and just sitting as GM. I want to mention the conference I was at. I was at the conference with a group called California Foundation for the Environment and the Economy. And it's just a general conference where folks around the state get together, water entities like us. This one was specifically around water. There's other topics that they talk about. Water entities like us, legislators, natural resource secretary was there, state water board member was there, and just maybe 50 people in person. And we just talked about just general themes of what's happening in the world of water, the drought, how we're planning for that. There's a whole world of water that we don't touch, like desalinization and water reuse and recycling. And so, and they talk about that, and they talk about things that we do touch, like, how are we going to improve our watersheds to, make sure we sustain this supply of water. So I just wanted to let you know that's where I was. The reason I bring this one up specifically is this is a new group that we're involved in. Typically if I mention Aqua and we went to the Aqua meeting, most of you generally know what that means, but this one's new. So I wanted to let you know it was super valuable. Adam went with me. I think our investment of time in that group is going to be well worth it. So we'll continue participation. Okay, with that said, we'll get on to the formal report. And yes, I did. Oh, another thing I want to thank you for is the workshop we had last week on a high functioning board. Thank you for the board for participating. I think it was a great workshop. I learned a lot of your expectations of us and how we can improve. And one of those improvements is provide a hard copy of the general manager's report at the board meeting. So when you sat down, you should have had a hard copy in front of you. Here it is. And just so you know, I prepare this weekly. I normally prepare it the morning of, and I'll in the future continue to deliver that prior to the board meeting. Okay, here we go. New Bullard's Bar is at about 470,000 acre feet of storage. It has come up about 30,000 acre feet over the past 10 days. Our power systems revenue for November totaled $5.2 million against a budget of 5.3. We generated approximately 35,000 megawatt hours during the month. And due to drought conditions, this was below forecasted volume of 56,000 megawatt hours. In the Cal ISO market for November, the day-ahead LMP, which is the day-ahead average price for Colgate, was about $60 per megawatt hour with a high of 111 and the low of about 24. And Cal ISO earnings per megawatt hour of generation were $82. And if you add in ancillary services to that, our average was about $95 per megawatt hour. Okay, so our maintenance crew assisted with the Division of Safety of Dams inspection of New Bullard's Bar last week. Our fleet crew has the California Highway Patrol terminal inspection next week on our commercial vehicle fleet. On operations, so Colgate 1 is currently in service and performing and is scheduled to be shut down for annual maintenance in January. This is a shift. We normally shut down Unit 1. It's normally the first outage of the year, but we shifted it this year, and now that outage is in January. Colgate 2 is currently out on its planned annual maintenance outage. They're actually scheduled to be returned on Christmas Eve, but I think they're bringing it back today. Narrows 1 is in service with an average flow of 328 cubic feet per second, and Narrows 2 is in service with a flow of 318 cubic feet per second. The reality is we could have just one of those units delivering the flow, but because we're anticipating a series of storms and we just came out of a series of storms, we're leaving both units on so that we can increase the load on the units and pass the water through the Englebright complex rather than have one offline and one online and constantly switching back and forth. So they're both online and doing well in preparation for these storms. And right now, literally as we speak, our flows through the Englebright complex are at our minimum required flows. However, last week they increased because of inflows, uncontrolled inflows into Englebright increased. We did not spill Englebright. This series of storms coming up, we will increase load on the units, but our forecasts show that we very likely will spill Englebright because the inflows to Englebright will be higher than we can control with our units. On December 8th, we received from FERC a variance to our January 1 through 15 increased flow requirements, which is estimated to result in conservation of about 13,000 acre feet of stored water. We requested this variance in October and we received it in December, and this is due to extreme drought conditions. Currently, our forecast is that we will take advantage of this because we'll see the series of storms. Englebright will increase, but the series of storms will decrease, and then by January 1st, we'll be down close to minimums, and we'll implement this variance. And this variance is keeps us from having to go to 1,000 cubic feet per second out of Englebright Dam during that period of January 1st through 15th. We can go down to what our minimum Accord and FERC flows are. So it's a conservation effort. We never know if we're going to need it when we ask for it. In years past, we've waited to see how the water year would play out, and we asked for it in late November. FERC changed their process over the last year on how they process variances, and they the word on the street was get these in early, so we sent it in early October, and it was obvious we were in drought conditions then, but things change, and so things are looking good now, but like I said, I think we'll still take advantage of it. That was relatively good news that we got that variance. Okay, drought. So obviously December has proven wet. The first few weeks of the month are above average, and we've had multiple storms, which put our snowpack right at about 100% average year to date. And if you follow, this is a graph on your hard copy. Look at that. Take advantage of it. If you follow this year versus 2006 and 2017, our wettest years, you'll see we're tracking that fairly closely. So that's all good news. You'll see that 2 pages later, there's a graph that shows we were well above average precipitation in October. We were about a little more than half of average precipitation in November. And based on our forecast over the next 10 days, we will be well above average for December. So storms are sporadic. It's either drought or flood. Not that we're in flood now, but it's two sides of the extreme. So that's what we're seeing. But right now, things are looking good. So for our forecast in the next 10 days, it'll be wet. There's lots of uncertainty in the models, but we should see between 5 to 10 inches of precipitation, basically today through the 28th. And now, just last night, John updated our forecast. There's a potential to continue the wet pattern later next week and potentially into the 1st of January. So that's all good news. These are cold storms, which are great this time of year. They improve the snowpack, which is obviously a natural reservoir for us. There's another page about La Nina conditions. I'll let you guys review that. Okay, human resources update. So the agency is happy to announce the promotion of Ryan McNally from project manager to the director of water resources and flood risk reduction. Ryan has taken Scott's job. I don't know if you've all heard that. Ryan, are you still here? Oh, okay. Well, congratulations to Ryan. The recruitment process continues for our human resources manager. Alex went up to Bullard's first thing Tuesday morning last week to grab some incredible pictures of Bullard's with snow. Those pictures were spreading like wildfire on social media, shared more than 300 times in the first day alone. And as of yesterday, it had been shared about 530 times. The images were also picked up by Channel 13 and Good Day Sacramento to introduce their weather segment last week. And the Appeal Democrat is planning to share them as well. And I will let you know, I was at a meeting at the Natural Resources Building with Wade Crowfoot last week. And one of the first things he said to me is, I saw the pictures of snow at New Bullard's Bar. So we're getting the word out there. After our last board meeting and the vote to approve the water transfer agreement, there was coverage of that in the Marin Independent Journal, the Appeal Democrat, California Water News Daily, and CBS 13 News out of Sacramento. Earlier this year, the board granted funds along with other government and private entities to the school districts for touchless water bottle filling stations. The stations arrived at the Office of Education unannounced on Wednesday, November 17th. And our newest challenge was not anticipating the staffing shortage that hit the county and district maintenance teams. With this concern, we reached out to the lone maintenance employee at the Office of Education to see if he would be able to install these water stations himself. But unfortunately, he's not able to install the stations in the near term. So as a result, Jackie and Amy Knorr contacted Marysville Joint Unified School District only to hear the same information, then reached out to the Department of Water Resources. Our Department of Water Resources contact was blown away by our efforts and offered to help in pursuing an Aqua for All grant to install the water stations. DWR will perform a site assessment at all Marysville Joint Unified School District sites on January 3rd. After the assessment is completed, we will submit a proposal to fund the installation. We're hopeful that we will soon see our Yuba County students walking up to the filling stations with their totally stylish Yuba Water Agency bottles to hydrate their growing bodies. Almost lastly, 14 of our employees and some of their family members and friends participated in the So You Can holiday food and gift deliveries on Saturday. We sponsored the deliveries as well. And we're able to include Yuba Water branded coloring books and watershed informational flyers in the boxes. I want to thank our team for that. That's great participation in the community. But lastly, I'm bummed that Scott left. I figured he would. He's a very efficient guy. But I wanted to make a comment about Scott, and I will keep this short. Here's how I will sum up Scott. He's been wonderful to work with, but Scott is an example of how to be a professional, not just in the water community, but for staff, including myself. So I will leave it at that. Our next board meetings are January 4th, a regular board of directors meeting, and an ABP meeting. That's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions, board?
Brent has a small.
I was going to ask, did you really write that sentence about the stylish bottles? Because
you know who wrote that, but I delivered it perfectly.
Oh, well. All right. Board member reports. Randy has left to take his wife to Davis, and he wishes us all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Brent?
Yeah, Willie kind of mentioned it, but I thought the meeting last week when we left the meeting early from Plumas Lake was just a very good meeting with the department head and other North Water Agency directors. And I think Director Crowfoot or Secretary Crowfoot was once again impressed with the ability of the agency to move and how we're working as fast as we can to make the Yuba River system the best in the state of California. And it was an excellent meeting. And I want to thank Willie, just did a terrific job and it worked out really well. So I just wanted to report on that. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's to everyone.
Just Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you for the training seminar we did last week. It was useful, and I appreciate all the work that the staff has done to, as we saw from the audit and the reports, that you guys are doing a great job and really appreciate you.
Don?
Well, just wrapping up the first year of this adventure, I really appreciate the opportunities, and it's been really a a great experience working with such an intricate organization, and all the people involved with it are really helpful. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Mr. Matthews.
I would like to say the same thing. Staff has many different varied objectives. They all seem to pull the boat in the same direction. And I would like to especially compliment our major revenue is power revenue. And when I look to see that the lump sum is at $60, but we're at 82, and that's called timing. And timing is not just timing for today, it's try to time so that you can get Englebright down at the right time so you can make extra power refilling it. And this takes a lot of concentration and hands-on work. And I want to compliment everyone in the agency because that is our biggest revenue. And obviously, a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody.
I'd rather be lucky than good, you know. But I'd like to thank staff for a wonderful year and supporting us all. You make it seem like everything's seamless. It's just, you make us look really good. Okay. But I'd like to thank the board for working together, and that meeting there with Mitch we really should do that yearly. Just and I'd like to be able to get back to the dinner at the powerhouse. I think the staff really appreciates us coming up there, and I wish we could all have got together and had a little toddy for the body. But Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Recording stopped.
Yuba-Sutter.LIVE's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at PlumasLakeSelfStorage.com.